for president, Chris Collins and Duncan Hunter, are being investigated and indicted. What do you see here in terms of, does this mean the president is meddling in the Justice Department investigation?
You know, this tweet alone may be an impeachable offense. This is such a disgrace. This is so contrary to the traditions of the Department of Justice. You know, I used to be a lowly assistant U.S. attorney. If I went to my supervisor and said, you know, we shouldn't indict or investigate a member of the president's party because he's a member of the president's party, I probably would have been suspended if not fired. So the sentiment at the core of that tweet is so contrary to the mission of the Department of Justice, and it's such an insult to the decent people who work there, the career prosecutors who work through Democratic and Republican administrations. It is, you know, we wear ourselves out being outraged at things Donald Trump says, but this one really is different because it is such an affront to the values of the Justice Department.
You know, as you pointed out, the tweet itself is factually wrong. And the investigation, the Chris Collins investigation, was not started under President Obama. And we have footage of Chris Collins on the phone the day that those trades were made
at the White House,
at the Trump
It's
White
interesting
House.
to watch it just to see if he looks excited that he's getting an insider tip, if we can glean anything from the video. Of course, he's just accused. These investigations are not complete.
This appears to be still video of us here, so if you want to do a dramatic reenactment, go ahead.
Kick my heels up.
But I will note, it's not the wrongness that's the issue here. It's that it's dangerous beyond the factual wrongness of it. It's dangerous, David, because he's saying that investigations should be political. And so far we have been Sass, frequent critic of the president, standing up and saying this is bad. You have Paul Ryan sort of sitting down, putting his spokesperson out and saying he doesn't like this very much and we'll talk about it later. Do you expect this to stir up much Republican outrage, David?
I don't expect it to stir up much Republican outrage, just because while Donald Trump breaks with tradition at every turn, Republicans do seem to sort of stay in line. Nonetheless, I'm just listening to Jeffrey talk about sort of what's at the core of how the Justice Department works and the sensibility about not getting involved. Do you guys remember back at the beginning of the Obama administration when President Obama weighed in on an arrest of Skip Gates, a Harvard professor and a police officer, and they needed to have a beer summit at the White House because the president got involved in something that perhaps he should have stayed out of?
The outrage.
It was like unbelievable. It was wall-to-wall coverage, and President Trump constantly is inserting himself into what had been, for all presidents, this notion of some independence distance from justice working its will.
I mean, and Jeffrey, just to remind people, just so that they know what we're talking about, so Chris Collins' indictment highlights evidence that he was doing insider trading, including what we're talking about at that White House picnic, and then Duncan Hunter, there's all sorts of evidence that the Justice Department has presented about how he was misusing $250,000 of campaign funds on a $14,000 Italian vacation, on groceries, on other household items, on getting his wife different positions on the campaign, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you know, I think the president's timeline is wrong in terms of when the Department of Justice investigation began, but the bad behavior that certainly receiving scrutiny did start in 2016 when the president could have seen some of that.
But you know, yeah, all of that is true. But the relevant factor here is that the president is saying that they should be treated differently because they're Republicans and not Democrats. That's what's outrageous about this tweet. I mean, the fact that he made yet another mistake in the timing, I mean, I don't really care about that. But the fact is, these are perfectly routine public corruption cases. They have no political content, you know, insider trading, stealing from your campaign contributors. Democrats do it, Republicans do it. But the point, the outrage here, is the president is saying the Justice Department should treat these two differently because they're Republicans and they had safe seats and they shouldn't have been indicted. That's what's so outrageous about this.
Well, we should add one more thing to that, Jeffrey, right? It's because they're Trump-supporting Republicans. That's really what it is. I don't know that he would come in here for any Republican that may have been not so supportive of it. These were his two first endorsers.
Right, but remember, I mean, John Boehner said not long ago, and I just think there is no Republican Party anymore. There's just a Trump Party. I mean, you have Ben Sasse, who basically supports the president across the board. He says, oh, this is terrible, but then he doesn't do anything about it. Not even the rest of them say anything is terrible. This is the Republican Party today. They have completely surrendered their consciences to Trump. They all know how wrong this is, but they're afraid of him, so they say nothing.
Well, the question is, what could they do about it if they wanted to? There are those who suggest, David, that Ben Sasse should hold up the confirmation hearing of Brett Kavanaugh today. He sits in the Judiciary Committee. I don't see that happening. I don't think Ben Sasse sees that as a reasonable way to address the problems he sees. The question is, what could they do about this tweet? If this tweet is so wrong, what could they do, David?
Well, they certainly have oversight responsibility. They could hold a hearing about it. I would imagine if the Democrats do win control of the House, it's exactly this kind of a thing. I know there's a lot of talk about impeachment, but it's this kind of a thing that will start taking place in Washington that hasn't, which is they no doubt will sort of call for hearings and investigate in terms of their oversight responsibility.
Hey, guys, we just got some of the excerpts of the opening statements that Brett Kavanaugh will give. This is happening in just 2 hours and 15 minutes from now. I'm seeing this for the first time, so let me do a dramatic reading, if we will.
Cold.
A good judge must be an umpire, a neutral and impartial arbiter who favors no litigant or policy. I don't decide cases based on personal or policy preferences. I am not a pro-plaintiff or pro-defendant judge. I am not a pro-prosecution or pro-defense judge. I am a pro-law judge.
That's a good start.
Jeffrey Toobin?
Well, you know, that image of the president as an umpire is something that John Roberts used in his very successful confirmation hearings. And those sentiments are certainly very admirable. But let's remember how Brett Kavanaugh was picked and by whom. You know, Donald Trump said, if I have 2 appointments to the Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned. And you know what? Donald Trump was right. Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned if Brett Kavanaugh is appointed.
And how do you know that? Hold on, Jeffrey. How can you say that so definitively when, you know, we just had one of his clerks on who says that he follows precedent and that there's not a suggestion that it will certainly be overturned?
The only people who don't think Roe v. Wade, you know, who are not saying Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned are the people who have dedicated their lives to overturning Roe v. Wade. They have suddenly discovered, oh, wow, this is maybe a great big mystery. Donald Trump outsourced the selection. Remember, he has this big list of people, you know, it's 20 people, 15 people, it's varied, to the Federalist Society. The Federalist Society is built on the idea of overturning Roe v. Wade, of declaring affirmative action unconstitutional, of saying that religious people can keep gay people out of their bakeries, out of their hotels, out of their restaurants. This is a platform of issues that's what matters to them. That's why Brett Kavanaugh was picked. Of course he's going to say, I'm keeping an open mind. You know, Susan Collins is free to delude herself into thinking that Brett Kavanaugh has no opinion about the future of Roe v. Wade and thinks it's settled law. Come on, let's at least be honest. You know what? A lot of people think Roe v. Wade should be overturned. They want a Supreme Court justice, you know, their Supreme Court justice. But let's be honest about who these people are, not, you know, pretending that there are open questions when they're not.
Jeffrey Toobin, David Chalian, thank you for joining us.